city flouted the state law, the Shoreline Management Act, specifically for the Evergreen Point. So this is a retired ecologist agreeing with our basic contention, but for 2.5 years, we have been completely stonewalled. That project has been stalled. There's never been accountability. So when I was working on this, poor Robin had the misfortune, as literally as I'm typing, I said, Robin, I can't go with you. I really need to do this. And what I was doing was trying to figure out what in the world is going on with this crazy town that they're ignoring state law. She went out to witness and film the MLK sweep, and she came back traumatized. And when she did, we're looking at each other because I'm thinking about how can a little town ignore state law so shamelessly and do so for 15 years. That neighborhood was gaslit for 15 years with the erasure of the Shoreline Management Act. So she's coming back traumatized. They've just disposed of the homeless's survival gear, just dumped them. At one point, there's a tent that is being crushed. As it is being dumped into a dumpster, Robin hears a cat. So she asked them to stop. I think there's a cat in there. You're going to kill. So they hesitate for a moment. As she's there filming, a homeless guy comes up. He looks at his tent, and it has his possessions, which he's been holding onto so that he could get enough money to get into an apartment. So he reaches this tobacco, and he's in grief. It's all his stuff. They've just dumped it. They've made all his property disappear. So Robin gets this, and that is how Friend of Smith's Cove starts. We realize, wow, we are in deep trouble.
Jose, I really appreciate that. And, again, everyone, I appreciate you joining us on the Conduit today. This is a very powerful conversation. You are joining us, Jose and Kimmy in the studio, a legendary duo. This is a very important conversation. If you're just tuning in and you're wondering, hey, we're talking about homelessness and we're talking about the shelter and the property that BHA has just purchased. Jose is giving us a little bit of the history on the Growth Management Act and the Shoreline Management Act, which I put in the link for you and the information from the Department of Ecology. So as they're speaking, one of the things that I want to do for you is try to give you as much education as possible, because you need that information, right? You're looking at city council meetings and you're watching and folks are throwing out acronyms. You're like, well, what does that mean? What does this mean? So I'm putting those links in and I'm slowing them down. It's like, okay, what are ARPA funds? And, having them define that, but giving you that information so that you can see it in real time and you can go back and watch this and have access to it so that you can see it. But all of these things go together and the tie-in so that you can have that information. So I just want to give some shout outs to folks that are viewing, and then we will continue on. So again, we hit on Jessica, and we see Robin is in here. We also see Zach. Shout out to Zach. And we see Tommy. And who else is in here? We've got, everybody's in here today. Thank you guys so much for coming in and supporting. Again, keep your questions and your comments coming. This, again, is an important conversation. We need to activate folks and get you not only to come to city council, but to get educated. They want you to not know. These things are very convoluted. And, quite frankly, it sounds like city council folks themselves don't really know what the laws are and how things work. Right. And I think a lot of that is actually understandable. You get elected. There's a lot to do. They don't have a lot of time. I think, honestly, to me, this is my own opinion, I think they're underpaid. They only meet once a week. One is a study session. The next time they're meeting for a little bit of time. There's so many issues that they're trying to manage with the city. And there's so much to go through, and they're barely getting through anything. And I don't think there's adequate enough time that they use on even one of the topics that they're trying to get through. And so not only are they just scratching the surface, but a lot of times folks come in front of them, they tell them what it is, and they're just kind of banging the gavel and saying, yeah, okay, it sounds good to me, we trust you, and they're just pushing it through. And that's kind of what is my perspective on it. And unless it's a passion project for them, they may dig in a little bit more. But other than that, the developer comes through and says, hey, this is what it is. Hey, they're just kind of going for it, right? And if they have any kind of relationship with them, it's like, hey, we trust you and you've built all this stuff before, and hey, we've known you and our kids went to school, or we're part of this same organization, and hey, you're a good guy. We go to the same church, or whatever the case may be, and hey, that's it. Bob's your uncle, and there you go. Next thing you know, Mr. Bremer owns all of Bremerton. They're naming the city after you. But let's go ahead and jump back to it. And then Monty is the last one. I so appreciate this incredible local news source. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you too. And again, we can't do it without you. So thank you so much. So we're just kind of leaving it off there with the Shoreline Management Act and the Friends of Smith Cove. We're going to put those links in there too, so that you can become a friend of Smith Cove. And also, Kimmy, your sites, you have many of them, which are...
the Bremerton Homeless Community Coalition on Facebook is the best, easiest one to locate.
That's the best one, easiest one to locate. And then also, if folks want to join the meal train.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many things, right?
Things to do, yeah.
So we're going to put all those things in there because we want folks to jump in there. As they say, many hands make light work, and there are always different things to do. And it doesn't require you to do 7 days a week and 20 hours a day. 1 hour, any little bit helps, right? As Zach says in my recent email to the city council to present what I plan to speak about, they said they'll only give me 90 seconds to speak. I realize time is of the essence during these city council meetings, but that's a short amount of time to plead your case. Absolutely. First off, not only did they take away our ability to speak, which many believe is unconstitutional, but 90 seconds is not enough time to adequately state your case and to really say anything of substance. And then you can only comment on certain things. And so there's so much to speak to, and it really is ridiculous. So do you want to hear from your people or not? And it is supposed to be about the people. And then it ends up being the folks that either are retired, have the income, the revenue, or have the time to come down and make their voices heard. And those that are organized, right, they can come on down, or those that aren't afraid of reprisal in one way or another to come down and make their voices heard. And then those are the ones that are able to do it. Don Michelle is calling in. I'm gonna have someone else answer that and see what she has to say, and maybe we'll go ahead and put her on speakerphone if that's appropriate. All right. And Zach says yes. The more resources we can access, the better. All right.
Does she want to be on speaker?
Oh, shut up. Okay. That wouldn't be. Oh, you take it in the other room. Just call her back and take it out. Take it out there. All right.
She's like, don't put me on blast. Can I mention a few things?
Yes, please.
I'm taking notes of things I wanted to add on.
Yeah, we don't want to get too far, so jump in there.
Yeah. So I think all of us know, like, we live under an incredibly oppressive system, right? And so none of this really comes to as a shock to a lot of us, how this is happening. But I think what we're trying to do here is let, like, an average person understand what's going on around them, and to understand that the only way this is going to change is if we come together, like you were just saying. And so, like, the whole 90-second thing, or the talks on the shelter, when only a few people show up to these meetings, it really allows a lot of things to occur that you wouldn't agree with if you had been plugged in a little bit. So I know everyone is busy. I hear people telling me, like state representatives saying, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I can't help where I live because I have so much stuff at the state level. But I too work 12 to 16 hours a day, full time in a trauma ICU with incredible chaos and tragedy at a full-time basis for 20 years now. And I still find time to come to meetings because this stuff there's too many people right now that are comfortable, but but it's not going to last for long. And when people who become uncomfortable, we're trying to warn you now that you should start feeling the squeeze now, and we should start now, and we should start collaborating now and coming together. And then also I wanted to mention how I do agree that the city council might not understand everything that's truly going on. Like you said, and even the planning commission is all volunteers. And so what we found through public records requests is that there's a lot of information being provided to people that's, in my opinion, very biased and very one-sided. And so there's staff who receive all of our emails and they summarize them for the planning commissioners. And so however they summarize it is how they will read it, because I doubt they're reading like 3 and 4 page letters, right? They have a lot to do, and I'm not blaming them for that, but I'm just stating that we have become so far removed from what's actually happening. We've made this incredibly complex. We've made it so hard for people to really see what's going on. So I guess that's one of our purposes here, is to show our side of it, because they've shot themselves in the foot when they allow us, they remove our ability to speak to them, because that's the only safeguard to hearing more than one side of it, right? So you're hearing it from the people who are staffed there, who have some really interesting sort of concerning connections with the wealthiest, and that's the information they're getting, and they're taking it as law when we're saying no, they're omitting law. And there's some other interesting stuff down the pipeline that we'll talk about later, about that we've just recently uncovered with a staff member who really is sort of a expert at what I'm saying, and presenting one side of a story. And these people, inherently since childhood, I guess we've been taught that we need to believe these people. And so that's what I think the city council is doing, is believing people who may not have everyone's voice in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge issue, right? There's these, it really does seem to be by design. And if you tuned in to the study sessions and those conversations, they really drug their feet. And the laughing and the joking that was taking place during those conversations over the months, I think there were folks that wanted to push it off until it was like next year, and they were really trying to kick the can down the road, and folks didn't want to bring it back. And like, wow, really? I mean, you really don't want to hear from the people, right? And it was like, hey, just write in. And, I was like, oh, and I read every single one. It's like, really, write in every single one, but you don't even attend all your meetings. So you can't possibly spend time reading every single one.
I have to say something, because a lot of times when I talk in council, or even to my poor partner about what goes on in the city, I am actually speaking in grief. Like, I get really depressed and sad. And of course, certain people on council interpret that as, scary Jose, apparently. But you mentioned how council members are underpaid. They're ordinary people, and you don't think they understand some of the stuff going on. And this may be true. It is true. They are actually quite a diverse group in terms of personalities and background, identity, and that actually should be a good thing. But here is where I have to tell people, as a devil's advocate, don't cut them that much slack, because some people will say, well, they have a tough job, they are underpaid, they're just like you and me, they're human like us. And I would say that is absolutely true. But Washington has a rule that every city and county must have a city attorney. You have to have a professional attorney. And that's common sense. There is a reason for that. Ketanji Jackson, the Supreme Court Justice, has a dissent in a case where Trump was allowed to essentially have immunity for his shenanigans, right, with the elections. And I feel sorry for all the justices of the Supreme Court, who in the old days would have been called Ketanji Jackson says. And she is citing to an 1882 case. Ketanji says, the All government officials, all public officials are creatures of law, she says. And they are all, from the highest to the lowest, not above the law. They all must obey the law, right? So, and the tragedy of her opinion there is that it is a dissenting opinion. She is basically saying you're letting the government off the hook, or the president off the hook. No government official should be above the law. So that is her dissent. She says from the highest to the lowest. The way that the council is not excused from not being hip to the law or even hip to ethics is that they have immediate access to a professional attorney. In fact, a few of them. And the tragedy for Bremerton is that we have seen, including the pause, the gag rule that they call the pause, where that whole slow walk over half a year. They slow walked this phony deliberation and discussion about what free speech meant, about what the Open Public Meetings Act meant, about what was allowable and what wasn't. I listened very attentively because that's my bag. That's why, as a Puerto Rican, as a powerless Puerto Rican, as a once homeless man, as long as I have the ability to think freely and express myself freely in the context of American law, which I have argued is imbued with fairness, as long as I have that capability, even though I have nothing, even though I'm dressed in rags, even though if I'm on a sidewalk and hungry, right? If I have that freedom to express myself and to go to government and tell them, fix this, I can say, the law says this, and you are obligated to follow the law. So if I can evoke the law that I know or have gotten to know that it can save me, then there's hope.
So what you're saying to me, Jose, just to summarize, is doesn't matter, like with Christine Camaretta and what's the gentleman's name was just elected?
Rick Tift.
Rick Tift. Okay, I'm new. I just got elected. Because there's a city attorney, it's not an excuse because I can go to the city attorney and say, explain this to me. Yeah. And the city attorney, who is there, educated, is versed in the law, should be able to come back and say, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the law. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do.
And here is the other thing. I have sometimes had occasion to say that you're better off having a dumb attorney who is an absolute slave to his professional ethics than an extremely clever attorney who doesn't give a hoot about professional ethics as an attorney. The magic of having a city attorney is that they are bound to follow the rules of professional ethics. And those rules of professional ethics say that when you are representing, even when you're representing a client, and in this case, the client is the Municipal Corporation of Bremerton. When you talk to other people in your capacity as an attorney for Bremerton, you cannot give a misstatement. You cannot mislead. You must represent the facts accurately. You must represent the law accurately, right? In good faith. So here's the tragedy of Bremerton, is that we have city attorneys. When we hear these hearings go on in public, these meetings go on in public, and they're talking the law, they're talking about the standards that apply to them. For instance, the Shoreline Master Program, the Shoreline Management Act, the Comprehensive Plan, the Gross Management Act. What the city attorneys, their role is to act as the guardrails. We should not be the lay public listening to these hearings, right? And be subjected to misrepresentations of law or fact. That should never come from our government officials. Yeah. And unfortunately, it continually happens over and over and over again in Bremerton.
So explain this to me then, Jose, because we do have a city attorney. So is there an issue here?
There is an issue.
So explain that to me, in your opinion.
A horrible issue.
Explain that to me.
This is painful for me to say.
Okay.
Because my existence, my being able to make a living back when I was in the rat race and support my family, that very existence was dependent on me helping attorneys.
Okay.
On boosting them, on making sure they didn't waste their time on trivialities. So it was my job to be the gopher. It was my job to look at regulations till my eyes, were dead. It's my job to support attorneys because it's their job to do their very best and be ethical in the way they represent clients, right? They must uphold the law. So for instance, when I did research and wrote a brief on any given subject, I had to keep these rules of ethics in mind. I could not give them a product that violated the rules of professional ethics because they would get in trouble. So at the bottom of any legal analysis, ideally, is truth. It's the attempt, the aspiration at truth. And what we've seen time and again is two things. And they're quite horrible for me. One is the city attorney will be mute. She could be sitting right there. Brett Jesse could be sitting right there. If someone else, a planner typically, is going on and on about the law, or it could be a council member, going on and on about the law, and it is completely not only erroneous, because an error in good faith is one thing, but when you have a maliciously misrepresented version of law that actually doesn't exist, could not exist, and the city attorney is standing there or sitting there mute, that is a broken city. That is a broken process that will harm the public. And when I say the public, I'm talking about, you could be Roy Runyon, you could be Mike Simpson, you could be Anna Mocker, you could be Marwan, Kimmy, Jose, anyone. The public is the idea of the common good. It's all of us. If the common currency between all of us is law, like real law. So when you hear a misrepresentation from people you trust, council members, planning commissioners, the permitting agency, you're hearing this version of law that actually doesn't exist. This is what happens. As a democracy, we all have the right. In fact, we have the duty to participate in governmental processes. But we're lay people. We don't know a lot. We can try. We're all experts in different ways. We all have pinpointed knowledge in different ways depending on our background. But it's very rare for us to be a genius and know everything. It sure doesn't apply to me. So we're standing there, we're giving a presentation on any number of subjects. And if it's a matter of law and what we're hearing is a misrepresentation of law, and now we are supposed to participate, discuss, and give our opinion, because we haven't been armed with the facts. We haven't been educated about the law accurately. Whatever we say is going to be subpar and inaccurate. So when we hear misrepresentations of fact or law, we have been crippled as citizens. We have been obstructed from participating fully in a meaningful way in these processes. So, for instance, in the comp planning, which is based on the Growth Management Act, if we're getting a version of the Growth Management Act where all we hear is development, 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 density, 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 developers, 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 but they never talk about the Shoreline Management Act. They never talk about environmental justice. They never talk about fairness in the permitting process. We are being given a skewed, warped version, a cherry-picked version of the law. So we haven't been educated. In fact, we're being led by the nose to just gravitate towards a version of the law that favors developers. So sometimes, I don't want to say it's benign, but sometimes it might be inconsequential. If they're passing a law about picking up dog poop in the park and they got the law wrong, we can probably survive that. But if we're given presentations on, for instance, the ecological stewardship that we all have a duty to contribute to, but somehow they omit the Shoreline Management Act, so that now in this town, we can have high rises that reach up into the sky right on the sandy beach of Bremerton. So that would be a travesty. But if the law we are being educated on is fake law and is coming from the experts, the planners of Andrew Spencer's DCD, that's given us the impression that when we see sky rises go up right on the beach, that's okay, that won't have an impact on the environment. that is not in fact a reversal of law, a half century of law. When we hear talk of the BHA shelter, and they're giving us a version of law that caused what the BHA is doing as spot zoning, they're giving us the idea that it's wrong in that location because, and these people have come up with a variety of reasons. It has actually changed over time. From Denise Fry's, well, we're going to lose tax revenue, to suddenly we hear this talk of spot zoning. It's fake law and it's misleading people. And what I like to tell lay people is, if we don't have the correct version of law, then what happens is we are not going to know who is being hurt, who is being enriched, who is being misled. So, as an example, the contention from actual city planners, Andrea Spencer specifically, that the BHA shelter at that location is spot zoning, it is not only utterly false, that actually constitutes a criminal false report on her part.
Really?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah. But nobody calls people
I don't know
out
if you
on
can
this.
see this.
Hold on, let me just cut this off really quick. What is on your screen here is the, we'll just scroll back up to the top here for the city. This is the City of Bremerton Comprehensive Plan. I'm just taking that off here, and I'm just going to take myself off the screen.
Just tell me when you see my little citation.
Yep, go ahead. You're there.
Okay. This is a state statute, and I've cited it, spelled it out, put it in briefs innumerable times. It's corny, but it's absolutely essential. This is a guardrail that tells government officials, including our planning commissioners, including the